Hello everyone! Today's topic is Finland ranked number 1 for happiness. So why is depression so widespread there? In the United Nations World Happiness Report, Finland has taken the number 1 spot for 7 years, running as of June 2024. But despite this, clinical depression is highly prevalent in Finland, and its suicide rate is as high as Japan's. Finland's per capita GDP, or household income, is considerably higher than the global average, and many people there are well off. It also ranks highly when it comes to health and welfare, employment, and freedom of choice. Yet despite all this, a large number of people there suffer from depression, and the suicide rate is fairly high too. Why is this? This is what we will be exploring in today's video. Over the course of history, humanity has endured times of poverty and famine, but now in the 20th and 21st centuries, much of the world enjoys food sufficiency. Medical science has provided us with much greater longevity as well as stronger defense against illness, and many people get to live peaceful lives untouched by war. People who lived in past eras would probably look at our current era and think we're incredibly lucky to live in a time like this. Despite this, however, rather than delighting in our good fortune, many people feel deeply dissatisfied. Day in, day out, people work the same soul-destroying jobs for a pittance, feeling no sense of meaning in life and wondering what it even is that we live for. Suicides remain a constant all over the world. All the blessings of this modern era seem to fail to alleviate the discontent and misery that burdens so many. Why is this? What is causing such levels of discontent? And if you look inside yourself, can you say you feel any differently? Let us then examine what exactly the truth is about the state of happiness in Finland. Does the number 1 ranking in happiness really reflect reality? Today, I will talk about these 3 points. 1. Happiness ranking. 2. Why are depression and suicide so widespread? 3. The root cause of suffering. Some people would say that there is something strange about ranking happiness in the first place. Isn't happiness subjective? Is it really something you can measure in numbers? Certainly, happiness looks different for each person. Someone might lack money, but feel happy due to other factors in their life. Another person might have a lot of income and high social status, yet feel unhappy for their own reasons. How then can we measure such a subjective thing? Of course, happiness is not something we can measure in grams. It's also just not feasible to interview every single person in a country, get each of them to rate their own happiness out of 10, then gather all of those scores and find the average. There's also the fact that not everybody is open about their true feelings. If someone is asked, "Are you happy?" the answer they'll give will depend on who is asking and in what kind of situation. Let's say someone in North Korea was asked, "Are you happy?" in a public place. Do you really think they'd feel free to reply, "Oh, I feel so unlucky to have been born in this country"? Of course they couldn't say that, even if they thought it. If they did, they might get taken away and forced to do hard labor as punishment, so you wouldn't be able to get an honest answer out of them. In China, a person might be worried about their social credit score, so if they're asked whether they're happy or not, they too might feel unable to answer honestly. They might fear that if they outright said, "I feel unhappy because China is ruled by communists and we don't have any freedom," they'd lose points from their social credit score and suffer penalties like not being able to get a credit card. It's for these kinds of reasons that the UN opts to use objective data to try to measure the happiness of each country. In particular, the following 6 criteria. 1. How much income people earn. 2. whether the country has a good, healthy life expectancy, and how good health and welfare are in the country. 3. How much freedom of choice people have when it comes to things like employment and education. 4. Whether people feel they have others they can rely on in a crisis, including family, friends, fellow townspeople or countrymen, public institutions, etc. 5. How tolerant and open-minded a country is. For example, gender equality, etc. 6. Whether or not people trust in their country and those who run it. Going by these 6 things, Finland earned the highest scores of them all. Educators, politicians, and economists all have good things to say about Finland, and intellectuals say other countries should learn from the way things are done there. With its high standards in each one of the aforementioned criteria, it seems Finland is an exceptionally good place to live. This is why the country has managed to top the list when it comes to happiness for 7 years running. And yet, despite this, Finland has high rates of depression and suicide. This flies in the face of the data that seems to paint it as an ideal country. Why is it, then, that so many Finnish people are taking their own lives? Let us explore the reasons as well as what kind of insights the Buddhist teachings can give us. Academics have given 3 possible major reasons for the high rates of depression and suicide in Finland. 1. Short daylight hours. 2. Wealth-related excessive free time. 3. Alcohol. Simply put, a lack of daylight hours makes people feel depressed. Sunlight stimulates the production of the chemical serotonin, which makes people feel good. This is why it's commonly recommended to go for a walk outside when we feel down. Also, since Finland is a wealthy country, it is able to provide many good things for its citizens, and that, combined with the fact that many people are financially comfortable, means that people tend to have a fair bit of free time. This in turn means that rather than having to struggle to survive every day, people have the time to contemplate the meaning of their existence. If someone has their hands full all day dealing with things like work and putting food on the table, they won't have time to sit around pondering about philosophical things like the purpose of life. It's only those who have a fair bit of time on their hands that can do that. Finland is also a cold country. So many people turn to alcohol to warm themselves up, which contributes to rates of substance addiction. Certainly, it makes sense if short daylight hours, overabundant free time, and alcohol consumption are part of the reason behind the high rates of depression and suicide in Finland. But are they the only reasons? Could there be something more to it? Of course, Finland isn't the only country in the world with a high suicide rate. In 2019, Lesotho had the highest suicide rate, with other countries in the top 10, including Guyana, Zimbabwe, and the Central African Republic. These countries are close to the equator, have long daylight hours, and have high levels of poverty as well. In countries like these, it is the harshness of life there that contributes to the high suicide rate. This is in spite of the abundance of daylight and the lack of wealth-related free time. Clearly, then, there must be more to a high suicide rate than these elements. What, then, is causing people in Finland to be suicidal? Here is where Buddhism offers some interesting insight. It teaches that actually, even if people have good income, good health, freedom of choice, and so on and so forth, it does not guarantee that they will be happy. In fact, Sakyamuni Buddha taught that having and not having are the same. In other words, whether people have things or lack things, they will suffer all the same. Why so? Those who lack things will suffer because of their lack. Those who have things will suffer because they have those things. Those who lack an income suffer due to being poor. Naturally, people who lack money in this way believe that if they could just gain an income, they would no longer have to suffer economically. But think about it. Does being economically affluent guarantee that you will be happy? In fact, those who have money and possessions have to suffer the anxiety of potentially losing it all to the likes of theft or scams. Instead of suffering due to a lack, they now have to suffer precisely because they have this wealth. In this way, having and not having are the same. This is a graph that shows life satisfaction in Japan relative to changes in GDP per person. As you can see, between 1981 and 2008, the GDP per person went up quite significantly. This was in spite of the fact that Japan went through a recession. At the same time, though, life satisfaction actually decreased a bit. This goes to show that happiness does not actually correlate with income. In fact, the change in income hasn't really affected life satisfaction at all. The same goes for our increased lifespan. Right after the war, the average life expectancy in Japan was about 60 years. Since then, it has risen to 85. In fact, nowadays, a significant number of people live into their 90s, and even there are hundreds. However, now people are facing types of suffering that didn't exist before as a result. For example, the rise in life expectancy has brought with it a rise in cases of dementia. This has in turn led to a rise in cases where elderly people with dementia are being cared for by other elderly people with dementia. For instance, responsibility for the care of a woman with severe dementia might end up falling to her husband, who himself has dementia, albeit less severe. He tries his best, but unsurprisingly, the place ends up a mess while he struggles to remember what kind of care to give his wife and when. This raises the question, is it really better to be living so much longer? While there are, of course, upsides to having extended our lifespans, one could say that in doing so, we have also extended the pain and difficulty we have to go through. Freedom of choice is also something that has brought new downsides along with its advantages. In the past, arranged marriages used to be common, with parents deciding on their children's marriage partners for them. It wasn't unusual for a person to see their new spouse for the first time at the wedding ceremony. Nowadays, in many places around the world, people are free to choose whoever they want as their marriage partner. Although that might seem a lot better, there is also the fact that now, as a result, people may have to contend with the problem of being unable to find a suitable partner themselves. Maybe they don't know who they want to marry. Maybe they get engaged to someone, but then it doesn't work out. Or maybe they're just unlucky in love in the first place. Then, as time ticks on, they wonder if they'll ever get married at all. This means not getting to settle down the way they might have hoped. When it comes to having people to rely on, that too actually has its downsides. A person might rely on, say, their spouse and perhaps their children too, which they might be happy about if there's a good relationship between them, but not so much if there isn't. After all, relying on someone means being bound to that person, which isn't great if you'd rather not be around them. In which case then, some might say, perhaps it's better to be single? Well, not necessarily. If you're all on your own, if you fall ill or end up injured, then the only person you'll have to rely on is yourself, which can make things difficult to say the least. This, and the isolation of living alone, may make a person long to find a marriage partner. If that person actually finds a marriage partner, though, does that guarantee they'll be happy? There's always a chance they'll end up merely resenting the person they've ended up with and wishing they'd just stayed single and free instead. In this way, those who lack things suffer because of their lack, and those who have things suffer because they have those things. It really is just as Sakyamuni Buddha taught. Having and not having are the same. This is why, even though Finland is blessed with wealth, health, freedom of choice, and other such things, the people there still experience suffering, just in different ways than they otherwise might. Buddhism teaches that these things are not what will bring us a true sense of happiness. The island nation of Fiji has been described as the world's friendliest islands, a place where happiness comes naturally and the last paradise on earth. Its general image is of a place with white sandy beaches and gorgeous cobalt blue seas where people can escape their hectic lives and just relax. No one is in a hurry. Everything is chilled out. Visitors can put away their smartphones, forget about everything, and just enjoy the sound of the rolling waves and watch a beautiful sunset every evening. Ah, peace. You might feel as you look at the warm, happy-looking smiles on the faces of the local people that Fiji seems to have managed to preserve something wonderful that your own country has lost somewhere along the line. Perhaps you might even start wishing you lived there yourself. Does that mean, though, that all people who live in Fiji feel they have perfect lives where nothing is ever wrong? Of course not. In his song Paradise, Fijian musician Dave Lavaki sings, "I'm in paradise with about 6 million problems. Don't know how to solve them." He describes being too poor to repair the holes in his floor, as well as not having the money to take his wife somewhere nice like he wants to. He's surely not the only one with problems like these. Others may feel pressured to inherit a family business, such as fishing, but long to escape elsewhere and do all the things they want to do. Others yet may have dreams of relocating to America and making it big there. If you ask the people of Fiji for their honest opinions on their life there, you'll probably hear about an array of problems that you might not even consider while you're lost in admiration for the beautiful scenery. Truly, the grass is greener on the other side, and having and not having are the same. So what about the United States of America, one of the richest countries in the world? Well, did you know that deaths by drug overdose are a serious problem there? Let's take a look at this infographic. In 2023, drug overdose deaths in the USA exceeded 100,000 per year. That is more than all deaths from AIDS, road accidents, and shootings combined at their very highest. This is only speaking of accidental drug overdoses. There are also cases of drug suicide. It is also alarming to note just how common drug addiction and overdoses are amongst famous people who seem to embody the American dreams. Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston, and Prince are all examples of American celebrities who struggled with addiction and either died of an overdose or had drug use as a contributing factor in their death. Why is it that this is seen so frequently in people who gain fame and success? And what does this say about America and the world? Perhaps it is a sign that humanity must reconsider the vector on which it is traveling. When it comes to haves and have-nots, the USA is definitely one of the haves, but clearly that doesn't mean it is without its problems. Far from it. This is yet another example of having and not having being the same. Being a have rather than a have-not might seem better. But either way, people end up suffering just for different reasons. The various fields of human endeavor like politics, economics, science, and medicine were established in hopes of maintaining and improving our wealth, health, freedom of choice, and other such things. Despite this, however, even when we have these things, it doesn't guarantee our happiness. Why is this? Buddhism makes clear that the cause of our unhappiness does not lie outside of us, but inside. It's not the economy being bad or medical science not yet being advanced enough that causes us to be unhappy. There is something inside of us that is stopping us from finding real joy in life. That's why no matter how much we change the things outside of ourselves, we'll still never be happy in a true sense. Wherever we might move to, whatever country we might live in, even if we left the earth and went to a different planet altogether, as long as that root cause of unhappiness remains within us, we will never find real happiness. And so, Buddhism teaches the change we need to make has nothing to do with what is outside of us. What we need to change is that darkness within our own selves that keeps us trapped in suffering. If we focus only on changing the things outside of ourselves, we will only continue to suffer, regardless of whether we are haves or have-nots. This is why depression and suicide are so prevalent, even in seemingly affluent countries like Finland. Therefore, Buddha taught, we must turn our gaze inwards rather than outwards, seek the elimination of that root cause of suffering, and finally find the liberation and joy that we have been longing for. This channel focuses on explaining the Buddhist teachings from various angles in order to make them as easy to understand as possible. If you'd like to learn more, why don't you hit that subscribe button so you can be notified whenever we release a new video. Thank you for watching today's video.